All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Screenside chat with Jurat Inc. and Notary eJournal founder Nick Colville. We're going to be talking about the Notary eJournal, Journal of the Future, some of the cool new updates. And for some of you, this might be the first time you've heard about this. So we're going to be able to show you a demo of how the eJournal works. And the really cool feature is the thumbprint or fingerprint scanner functionality of this thing, which is super, super cool and really efficient. And some of the amazing feedback I've heard from notaries that are using this all over the country right now is how much time they save on their signing appointments. Plus, there's an awesome cool factor involved with this too. So the way this call is going to work, super casual. I'm going to bring up Nick. Nick's going to share some of those updates and functionality. We're going to roll right into a demo of both the journal and the thumbprint scanner. And then we're going to open up for live Q&A. So I know you're going to have questions. You're going to have questions about whether or not you can use this in your state. You're going to have questions about what happens in certain scenarios, all that good stuff. Hold those for the Q&A. I'm going to be monitoring the chat. So if you want to type in a chat question, I'll keep track of those so we make sure we get every question answered today. But you will be able to raise your hand, unmute, and speak to Nick directly if you wait to the live Q&A. All right, without further ado, let me introduce Nick Colville, founder of creator of the Notary eJournal and founder of Jurat Inc. Nick's in Disneyland with his family, guys, so he's taking a little bit of time out for us. I always catch him in Disneyland. Thanks for being here, Nick.
Hey guys, can we do an audio check? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Awesome, perfect. Well, good morning, everybody. Again, it's always a pleasure to be here with Bill, and it is just ironic. Every time him and I sync up, I'm always in Disneyland, and I don't come here that often, I promise. I wish I could get away more, but twice this year, you guys have caught me here, and I love just being able to hop on a chat with everybody and going over what we're doing, what we've been doing. The main point of this call and the reason that we're kind of getting together is I like to keep all of the users updated with what we've been working on, because the majority of what we do goes back onto the feedback that you guys give us, and that is incredibly important to us as a company. I'm still a notary public. My wife's an escrow officer, and we're still in the field. And so this product wasn't created just by somebody who thought that it was a cool sounding thing and there was a hole in the market for it. This is something that was created by us here in California. We're in the Bay Area, so Campbell, Cupertino area. And we built this because we needed a better solution, right? And for those of you who are new to this or just meeting us, we started building this out in 2017. That's when we first formed the company and started some research and development. And then after 3 years of R&D, we launched the product in right at the tail end of 2020. And so we've been out for about a full year and a month now, and we've been getting massive amounts of feedback from all the new eyeballs, all the new people who are joining the app. And that feedback, again, is what we use to continue to create new feature enhancements, figure out what's a priority, what's not a priority. So we're going to be talking about a lot of things that users have asked for and talked about. And I do want you guys to feel comfortable at any point. If you need to shoot me an email, or anytime an email goes to support, I answer that one as well too. And that way we can keep that line of communication open. We'll always be able to get that feedback from you guys. Every state has a little bit of its own different nuances. So it's important for me to get that support from you guys. You guys are kind of my eyes on the ground in all these other states. I'm in California again, and today we will be touching on California compliance just briefly, because again, the more growth we see, the more people in California reach out to me, and that's something important to touch on. But what we're going to talk about first, before I go into the demo of the app, because I'm going to do some screen sharing. I'm going to show you guys how it works, and we're going to be talking about some of the new features and everything. But I have a list of things I wanted to talk about. That are features that you guys have again talked about directly, things that you guys have wanted to see, and things that we're still working on as well too. So to start off, I think it's important to look at. I'm going to go ahead and actually do a screen share on this one right now, so I could show you guys what we're talking about. Let me go ahead and just pop this up real quick. All right, can you guys see this screen here? Can I get like a thumbs up so I can see your bill? Okay, we look good.
We're
Okay,
good.
awesome. So this is important. This is pretty much your landing page when you're on the web. Now, again, if you're new, then you know that the web is pretty much just a read and export interface. It's not meant for creating new journal entries. That's going to be all on your mobile device. But what we do have here, as of last week, we did add the search bar up at the top here, so you can search for your entries. You used to have to find your entries a little bit more painfully on the web. The app, again, is leaps and bounds ahead because the app has to have more functionality. That's where all the work is done. And this is a view and export only part, but we do have that here, so you can go ahead and just type in whatever it is you need to look for, keywords. And this is important, of course, the search being important for people who have entries from way back in the day. You can see 2019, I do have a Bob Lynn. And again, I've been testing this since before it was actually launched to the public. So that would be a real notarization from 2019. If you ever get subpoenaed or if you have somebody who requests an entry, being able to search for it with just keywords like that is very, very valuable. And that way you're not kind of looking through all of your years old journals. My wife still has all it because she's on her 5th commission. She still has all her old ones. I think she's got about 11 or 12, and that's not even a lot compared to what I've seen some people have. So enhanced search functionality on the web is new, very important because people love that. I wanted to talk about a few things that we capture. These are a few data points that we capture for people to be able to prove what happened and when it happened. The first at the top, if you guys take a look here, we capture multiple timestamps, and I don't think we captured this many timestamps on our last call. And this is super important because when you write your hardbound journal, you just have the time in which you wrote that you started that entry, and that's it. Now, that'll get the job done. If you have a subpoena, you have to worry about providing some documentation for. It's just going to have whatever you've written there. For us, what we have is when you started that entry, which can be completely different day and time than when you finish it, because a lot of people love drafts. Now, a lot of you might remember, if you've been with me since the beginning, we didn't have drafts in the beginning. And the whole point of this app was actually to make it so efficient, you didn't need to do drafts. And then I just got flooded with emails. Everybody really wanted drafts still because people like to be able to do things ahead of time. And I understand. So we added back that functionality in there for you to create drafts. But that does create, a lag between when you start the entry and when you finish it. And this could present issues for a sequential journal as well, too. Now, our journal is still sequential, and we'll talk about the timestamp we use for that in just a moment. But we wanted to make sure that we capture as much data as possible to protect you as a notary. So we start off with, hey, here's when this entry was created, that started timestamp. And then we have the completed timestamp after that. Now, the completed timestamp is at the very, very end of the entry creation. You pretty much hit complete and review, and then you lock it in. At that point, it's no longer a draft, it's a finalized entry. You can't alter that data anymore. You can access the notes section so that you could always add notes about the signing, but you can't delete that entry the same way you can delete a draft entry. And for those of you who don't have, I guess, insight into how to do that, if you just do a long press on a draft entry from the homepage, you can delete it. It'll have a menu item pop up. So we are working on more hints that pop up within the app so that people do kind of pick up on some of that functionality as well. Then we have the uploaded timestamp, which is many times very, very similar. You see that timestamp is just a few seconds off. And that's when it uploads and syncs to the server. Now, we use the completed timestamp as what's going to be the sort for sequentiality in your journal, right? The completed timestamp. And to give you guys an idea of why that's so important, we have offline functionality within this app. You can use this in rural areas if you don't have connection. And there are a few requirements for that. You have to be signed in within 12 hours of that point in time. And that's for security purposes. So what I tell people is sign in the morning on your iPhone or whatever device you might use. We'll say 8, 9 a.m. And then at 3, 4 p.m., when you drive out into the middle of nowhere and find yourself with no service, you'll still have functionality of the app, complete functionality of the app. Now, if you weren't signed in within that 12-hour window, and then you try to go and sign in when you don't have service, that's not going to work. You can't authenticate with the server, and therefore you won't be able to sign in. So we do get some people who send me very upset emails because I said, you told me it has offline functionality. And the answer, of course, is yes, but you can't authenticate with the server while offline, and that's to protect your data. So it's important to note that, but the completed timestamp can be an action completed while offline. The uploaded timestamp cannot be. So we don't sort by upload because that's not the true time in which you completed that entry. We have the completed timestamp for that. And that is how we sort for sequential purposes. Now, not every state has a requirement for it to be sequential, but we do like to make sure that we provide that for the states that do have that requirement. And it's just a better look overall, a better streamlined journal. So we have the timestamps we capture, and then down at the bottom, I just want to talk about this. This is new as well too, the audit log. And this is similar. Maybe some of you guys have used SnapDocs before, where there's pretty much a log of everything that's completed within that signing. This is very similar to that. We log every movement you make that has some type of impact on the signing entry itself. And this is just so that you can, again, capture more data than you'd ever be able to capture on a hardbound journal. And I guess if you had to ask, why would you need this much data? To protect yourself as a notary. It all comes down to making sure you have enough information to provide if subpoenaed, if you have an audit going on, whatever the case might be. We want you to be well protected. We want you to have more than enough data. And since we're moving into, of course, an electronic platform with this entire product, we need to capitalize on the stuff that we can provide. And this is some of that information that we're able to put in a tangible format and link it to the signing entry. And that way, if you have to prove something happened, and for some reason you didn't have confidence in maybe the timestamp, so there was some other thing in which you were worried about having confidence, or that somebody was saying maybe you didn't actually do it. Well, this gives you the option to say, look, I did add this signer at this exact timestamp. I did remove this person. I added their ID. I scanned it, whatever it might be. So the audit log and the timestamping, they're relatively new in the past few months. And these are really, really big for just protection for you and for, of course, compliance purposes. So while I'm here on this page, I do also want to talk about the reporting that we have and the reporting that we're working on. Now, one of the questions I get asked all the time, of course, is people saying, hey, okay, I want to be able to export these, and what are my options for exporting? And to preface, what we did in the first year, so pretty much when we launched from late December 2020, up until just about a month ago, so it's about a full year, it was get the product out there on the market, put out every single fire that we saw come up now that we're getting more eyeballs, and then deal with all the different state differences between all the states and all the requests people were asking to make sure it was functional. And that was our first year worth of, work. Now we're on kind of year two, which is going to be a lot more of the fun stuff. And so I say that because the fun stuff is where we get to make everything look better and streamlined and perform better. And the reporting is one of those things that we, of course, are working on very diligently, and people keep asking about it. So if you need to, at any point, export an entry, and that's something you would do, of course, if you had to have a request maybe from a signer, or if you were going through an audit, the way you do it currently, you could do it, of course, just entry by entry. And what you're able to do is export one of two ways. You could either export the entire signing that you just did, which might contain more than one document. And that's right here, generate signing report. And that's going to generate a PDF that comes onto your computer. Now, you can't do that on the phone. And again, we haven't made that functionality available yet on the phone because iOS file exporting is very confusing to a lot of people, myself included at times. Where does the file go? And then it just kind of vanishes. A computer, people are much more comfortable taking a PDF, it downloads to their download folder, and they're happy they know where it went. So we will be having export features on mobile at some point in this year, but it's not something that we're pushing the gas pedal down on, and then there are reasons for that. But right now, again, you can generate that full signing report, which might have all of these documents tied to it, or you can generate a single document report for just this interspousal grant deed, just for the notary public oath and certificate of filing, whatever it might be. So this right here is more in line with what you're used to doing. If you need to provide an entry for somebody who might be requesting it, they're just asking for one document and one line item, and that's what they're going to be looking for. You could just generate that right there. But we also allow you to generate that signing report for the entire signing. And again, that's something where there's no comparable in a hardbound journal medium. But if you do have an audit going on, or if there is a court case where you're getting subpoenaed, to be able to provide more information, maybe an entire look at what these people signed in front of you at that one given time, that might be way more valuable to whoever might be requesting that. So we do have both options right there. And that's how you would of course export one. But the question we deal with a lot is, okay, some states require you to then turn in your journal to your Secretary of State when you're done with it. How do I do that? So what we do have now, and this is brand new as well, is we have monthly reports generated, and the back-end system will automatically generate the report once you click on that button. And it'll be all of the signing entries you created for any given month in PDF format. It's going to be pretty big, but it gives you kind of a data dump right there for that month. And then you can go ahead and either print, or ideally we would like to see as certain states start to allow you to turn in documents electronically. Now, I'm in California and they don't do that yet, but that's not to say they never will. So that would, of course, save you a lot of paper. But I do know as signing agents, you guys are also used to printing a lot. So that's not horrible, but that's our solution right now, is being able to go month by month. And that's a lot of data. So there are two things we're looking at when we talk about dumping data. One is, okay, how easy is that for the back end to do? Now, I perform a ton of signings. I used to do a lot more than I do now. And as a signing agent, a lot of you guys also have stacks of books or tons of entries. So then when you go to generate a report, it's massive in size. So functionality wise, being able to actually handle that request on the back end, that's one factor we get with exporting. And the second one is, we want to make sure that we're careful with just providing an easy one button click data dump for all of your data. Right now, we don't have a current export entire journal function. We will have that this year. We're going to allow it so that you can just dump the entire journal onto a PDF. And our plan is to create some easy PDF encryption options as well too. Maybe you could just export it with a password protection embedded in that, or find another way to allow you to protect the PDF when you export it. Right now, locking a PDF is very, very simple, but we want to be able to do that from the generation of that report to start with. So we are working on bigger amounts of data to be able to export at one time, but right now you cannot dump the entire journal. And we want to make sure that that's something where we don't just allow people to go in there. Maybe it's not you, somehow you left it open, and then someone's able to access that whole journal. Now, there are bad people out there in the world, so bad things will happen no matter what. The same way somebody could just steal your hardbound journal. If they really wanted to break into your house and steal it, they could. If they really wanted to somehow access your computer and then generate your reports, same problem. There's only so much we can do, but those are what we're working on with that report generating features. There will be an entire data dump soon for the whole journal, but right now it is month by month. You would just go through if you had to provide all of that information to the California, or to any SOS who requires that. And luckily not as many states require that, so it's not as huge of a concern, but there it is for you. That's super important for us to talk about. Now, I'm going to go back to my regular screen here, and I'm going to take a look at some of the other things here that we're talking about adding for people. Now, there are some of the smaller features like pen stroke width, for example, on the signatures. I do everything on my phone. The whole point is for it to be convenient. So I always just use the phone, but we do have a huge user base for like tablets and iPads. And I actually kind of envy those people. I want to start doing that more because it looks really cool and it's just a bigger writing surface. But the problem we encounter is some people do complain about the pen stroke width. That's something we're working on to allow you to customize it or pick between different sizes, because on a phone, it could get kind of squishy in there. Now, I think everybody notoriously knows that electronically signing is much more difficult than paper signing for just making that signature look decent. But that is just one of those small features that we're working on as well too. And we're also working on the templating for the export. So we were talking about the exports, and right now the PDF that's created, again, these file sizes are large visually, and we're working on streamlining that this year. It's going to be reduced in size overall. And that way, when we get to the point where we start to export the entire journal, you're not looking at a PDF that's got God, who knows how many hundreds of pages. Ideally, it would be a little bit more manageable as well. So we're working on that when it comes to future features. And those are some of the main ones in terms of requests we've gotten from you guys, and then things that we're currently working on. And what I'm going to do now, and I'm going to go ahead and throw open the app, and I'm going to show you guys how it works for you, those of you who are newer, those of you who haven't seen it in action yet. So let me pop up another screen share, and let's see here. Can you guys tell me, do you see the app? Can we get a thumbs up? Awesome, thank you guys, thank you. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of how this works within the app, and that way you guys can see the difference between web and app and how this works in real life. This is your homepage. On the app, you can search for your entries the same way we talked about. Let's find that Bob again. I bet we'll see him. There he is, same Bob. So we got Bob still in here, which is great. Now, it's important to note that I'm on my iPhone, and you can use any device you want when you're any compatible device, of course. This is Android and iOS. Now, everything syncs between those devices except your draft entries. Now, that is something that people do bring up a lot because they get confused. Anytime you start a new signing, it gets saved as a draft. So if I start this signing right here, by step one, they're going to ask for your current location. You can see at the top right, it gives you a tab on your draft being saved. Okay, we didn't have this feature in the beginning. We have it now. People love it. Everything you do up until any given point is saved as a draft. You can create as many drafts as you want. Drafts are created as a different color on the main page, so you can easily see the difference. And I'll show you right now. So I'll do detect current location. It knows I'm in Disneyland. I'm going to hit next. Now we'll say at this point, I want to go back. I'm going to hit the history button. It's going to take me back to my homepage. Now that's a draft. Everything we just saved up until that point is saved as a draft. If I perform a long press on it, you see here, I'll hold 1, 2, and I do have the option to delete that draft. Now, I cannot delete my saved entries. Watch what happens when I try to hold this. No, thank you. You can't do it, Nick. Stop trying to do illegal things. That's what this journal is telling you. You can't tamper with your data once it's saved. And that's, of course, for legal purposes. In many states, that requirement is in there. But also just for a best practice, you don't want to be going around trying to white out your hardbound journal, right? So a lot of times we do fall back on what is the similarity or what is the comparable in a hardbound journal, and how do we recreate some of the security functions of something as old school as a hardbound journal. And you would have to white it out, right? Which would be kind of lame. I don't think anybody does that. But so you can strike the signing. You can see those test entries right there. They are stricken. Right, and that is what you can do. If I go ahead and hold on that one, I can strike the signing. It doesn't delete the data, but it makes it look like it's not as important. And that's for people who really just think, gosh, I don't want that to be there anymore, but I did complete it, so I legally can't get rid of it. What do? You can strike it and it'll just appear as less important, but it's still part of your journal forever. Right? So we'll go back into that draft entry. It's going to take me back to right where I was. So that's the cool thing, is that it just takes you right back in there and you're good to go. Now I could add my signers. Now, adding signers can be done in a few different ways. If you are prepping an entry for drafts, you can just add that person's name right here. This is also something that we didn't have in the beginning because we didn't have drafts. So everybody was linked to some form of being identified by the notary. That's our job, whether it's personally known. In some states, we don't have that here in California, or 1 credible, 2 credible witnesses, scanning IDs, looking at IDs. But you always had to identify that person. That was the entire point of you making that entry. So we didn't have the option for you to just put it in there. Now we do, and that way you can create your draft. So if I want, I can just type in that person's name, and then I can keep going and I could save, and I can move forward. I could add more people. And then when I get in front of those people, I can then go back into this step 2, and I could hit edit identifications. And then I could add the identification I want to add and go from there. Right. So that is how you would do it if you want to be able to create that draft entry and have that person's name already in there. And that's helpful for when you need to also select between who's signing what document. And that's on the next step. We will talk about that in just a moment. But I really want to show you guys how smooth, of course, the ID, the favorite, I think, that most people talk about the most, the scanning of an ID. So we're going to go with this. This is going to be my ID. I'm going to add the identification. I'm going to hit scan ID in just a moment. It's going to be a real time so you guys could see it happen in real life. I could, of course, manually edit that data or input it as well if you guys ever need to do that. But I'm going to scan that ID. I'm holding the front. It tells me to flip it. I'm going to make sure I can see the barcode, and it just plugs everything in there for me. That was maybe about 2 seconds for what would have taken us 30 to 60 seconds for. And remember, we created this to be efficient. So security, compliance, and of course, efficiency are some of our main kind of pillars in which we built this off of, and we wanted to make it faster for you. So we do capture the suffixes as well, too, the prefixes, all that information. Now, I'll stop here and note, in Texas, you got to make sure you remove that ID number, right? That's illegal for you to capture that. And there's no way currently we have to allow you to selectively not scan that with the rest of the scan, right? You have to scan it all. I'd like to have something later in the future that says, hey, are you a Texas notary? You can maybe mark a box and it just wouldn't pull that data. But right now it just scalps data right off of that form of identification, including, of course, the ID number. And Texas is the only state I know of that has that weird nuance where you can't capture that. So you'd have to go in there and manually delete that. And then you can go ahead and hit save. Right. So just keep that in mind for those of you in Texas. Now, you can add another ID. You rarely do that, but some people do want to have multiple forms of ID of that person. This is not, and I like to highlight this, that I add another identification button is not how you add a second signer. I do get very frustrated people sometimes who say, I added another signer and it added their ID to the first person. And I know exactly what happened. They clicked that add another identification and they put it to the first person, right? So just keep that in mind. These are some of the small kind of things that we run into now that we're, of course, getting in front of more and more people. And that's important not to get that messed up. So everything looks good here for me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add myself again. I'm just going to pretend like that's 2 people for you guys. So I'm going to hit add new signer. I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to scan that ID, put it right in there, make sure my thumb's not covering anything. Looks good. Now you saw I was holding that ID portrait, right? Not horizontal. So that allows me to get it closer to the camera. It still scalps that data, no problem. So just keep that in mind. That's a little bit of a hint. It makes it so it's easier. Some people, we've seen problems where they try to start way too far back with scanning, and that ID is a little tiny small ID. And that's not ideal, right? So you do want to put the whole thing in the frame, and that way it just captures it quickly. So I have myself again. Now I have 2 people in this signing. And remember, the entire point of this is to prompt you through collecting all the data and try to make it as streamlined as possible. So these steps are meant to do that. And you want to capture the IDs, or you want to add whoever's going to be signing the documents in front of you, even if they're not all on the same documents. So we're going to touch on that right now, because of course you can have title only borrowers. Maybe the spouse is on the title and in the trust, but they're not, for example, on the loan. So then all of the lender notarization documents they're not going to sign, but they're still on all the recording documents. So things like that, where you still put that person in the signing entry, and we're going to be able to select who is not on each document in just a moment. Now, step 3 is the meat and potatoes. You could put the notary fee. In California, people talk about wanting to split up the $15 fee. You can do that on the documents as I add them. I'll show you that in a moment. You can put whatever you normally put here. I'm just going to put 0 as a placeholder. You could add your notes, angry people, not new in, angry people, a general notes section for the signing, right? And this is just for general. If you wanted to note anything about that signing, there it is for you. You could load your signing package. Now, signing packages are, of course, a collection of documents that you can go ahead and just pre-populate. And those are really cool. You can make a signing package on the fly, and you can make it from the home page. I'll show you that, guys, in just a moment. But if I do have one in here, I can go ahead and just select that, and it'll just throw that entire set of information into this entry to make it super easy. But I'm going to do it manually so you guys see it done the hard way. And we're just going to pull up this document library. Now, the document library is pretty robust, but there's no way we're able to make it robust enough for all the states and all the lenders and all of the requirements you guys have. We got too many emails for people wanting more and more types of documents. So we made it robust, but then you can just add your new type and it's going to forever stay in your document library. So if I want to add a new type, marriage document, forever love me, right? So my wife is stuck with me now. Haha, I got her. I got the new type of document. I want to add it in there and it's a jurat. So I can go ahead and save that document type. And that's going to be available to me. I could search my documents this way as well too. If I want to find any grant deeds or anything, it's going to pull those up. And then I just hit the plus sign right next to it to add it to the signing entry. So we'll say I want all of these documents in here. And let's just say signature name affidavit. There's two. Let's say there's two because there's one for each person and they don't both sign the same one. Remember that, of course, guys. Financial status affidavit. I'm just throwing a bunch in here, guys. But that's how the document library works right now. You can remove them, of course, and they'll be forever gone. I'll hit the add, and that's going to add it to this entry itself. So this is where it's going to put it into step 3, and then I go down and I can add notes for every single document. So in California, this is where we see a lot of people put that $15 note, so they can keep track of how they split up the prices. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not telling you how to do it, and I'm not telling you that one way is better than the other, but that's what we see a lot of people do. And then, of course, this is where you can remove people from that document. So say one of the people isn't signing this document, I just hit that check mark next to their name and the system won't link them to it. So this is super convenient to be able to notarize or get these multiple entries for notarizations, even though they're not maybe all signing everything. And that's, again, maybe a title only spouse, whatever it might be. I could add my notes for all of these, remove some of these people, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit next. So again, everything has been saved as a draft. That was the meat and potatoes, step 3. Now I'm adding the signatures. Signatures, you could have them do either way. I'm not going to flip it because it's going to alter the screen for you guys because I'm doing a screen share. But normally I just flip my phone landscape. I slide it in front of them and I say, hey, just sign it and hit the save button. One thing you don't want to do is have them sign it and then turn it, give it back to you, and then it switches its orientation back, because that changes the dimensions of the signature pad, and it'll just wipe their signature, so they'll have to sign again. Not a huge deal, but it's just a dimension problem within the app. So just hand it to them, tell them to sign, hit the save button, and then you're good to go. A lot of people do love to use styluses, which is awesome, so people can do that. I'm going to go ahead and sign another one there. Looks good. And now I get, of course, to the point where we have California compliance issues. How did we get something that's compliant with California law? Well, we started off by looking at the code and making sure that we could build out something that is compliant with everything they need. The biggest one being the requirement for them to actually scan the thumb or add a thumbprint to this entry itself. And that was something where nobody had built that out yet. There was only one competitor out on the market, which I think was Notary. They're still out there, but they don't have any thumbprinting options, right? And I don't like to call people out by names, but everybody knows they're the only other notary journal out there. And when we were doing some R&D and we were reaching out to different people, and the consensus we got was, well, if you want to add a thumbprint, have them take an ink thumbprint and take a picture of that with your phone, and then just keep that logged. That was really weird, right? So that was, of course, one of the catalysts for us to say, gosh, nobody's doing this, and that's not a viable solution. That would not be accepted, in our opinion, by the California Secretary of State. So let's build out that functionality. Let's make it so that you can actually digitally affix securely that information to the notary journal, because that is a key word, guys, affix. That's what they use in the wording for the California Government Code 8206A. Very important, digital or affix. You have to affix that thumbprint. So now I have my scanner. Now, can you guys see, am I still in the frame anywhere? Is there like a small window of me?
There's a small window, yeah.
Awesome. So then you can see me, and I'm holding up this device right here. This is for California only, although I do get notaries who are from other states and they ask about it and they just want to capture that data. And as long as it's not, legally not permissible, then they can do that. So this is called the SecGen Unity 20. And this is what we were testing a bunch of different devices, and this one just was the cream of the crop. And so this is the only one that functions with the app. It's a separate purchase. Now the vendor that we have on our website, pretty much we reached out to every vendor possible and said who's going to give us the lowest price for our people. There's no kickback. There's no incentive for us to send people anybody's way other than they got their price to the lowest, which is $132, and they're very good to our customers, and that's all I care about, right? So this costs $132, of course, a one-time purchase. For me, in my opinion, well worth it because of what you get in terms of technology. But this darn thing, I've been using this for 3 to 4 years, and it's still like a tank. It's still performing flawlessly. So this thing, it just syncs Bluetooth, and you saw it happen all in the app. So I just clicked connect within the app once this device was on. You don't want to go into your Bluetooth menu settings on the phone itself and then try to connect it to the device and then go into the app like it was maybe your AirPods or some other type of Bluetooth device. All the integration is done in the app. And so you just turn it on and then you're good to go. Right. So now you see it connected to it. I'm going to hit capture thumbprint. Now you're going to watch this right here. It's going to start flashing, and then I'm just going to go ahead and place thumb firmly on it for about 2 to 3 seconds. And then it's going to start uploading. Now I don't have to hold it down the whole time it uploads. A lot of people do ask that question. Well, here we go. Hit capture the thumbprint. It's flashing now. So the signer has to put the thumbprint down. I hold down firm. The light is no longer flashing, and it's starting to download. So like anybody's, if you're in California, you know, sometimes you get good prints. Sometimes people have like no print and they say, haha, good luck, you'll never get my print. So it really comes down to how much oil they got on their fingers. And if you think that print is suitable, that looks perfectly fine to me. There's a ton of data points on that. But if I didn't like it, I could just capture that one again and try again, maybe tell them to blow on their fingers or something and do it again, whatever it might be. But that happened very quick. That 100%, got there in about maybe 10 seconds. So I added that thumbprint. That's going to tag it to that person. And now I'm going to add another one to the second person. I'll use a different finger just for fun. So I'll hit capture fingerprint. I'll go ahead and use a different finger, and it's going to go ahead and upload it as well too. And we do have the option. You can see here it says right thumb at the top. You could change that to be assigned to any appendage, I guess, that you had to get there for that. But the point is, you can do it now in California, and that's the biggest thing here. This is the biggest hurdle, of course, building our entire app around being able to integrate with something and capture that data securely. That was huge. So now we have our fingerprints in live action. You saw me do it all. Now this here is where you review everything, and this is also where I'm going to be able to talk to you guys about one of the other new features that we have out. Now this is where I say, great, everything looks good. That's all the data I want. The entry is not final now. It's not done. Hit the review button. This step is going to finalize it. So that complete button at the top right will mark it as complete. You can do that offline or online. And we talked about that completed timestamp. That's what you want to use, of course, for when you're done. Don't go home and then try to complete it later. You could, because I guess we capture enough timestamps for you to protect yourself in court. You would be able to say, I added their ID an hour prior to hitting the complete button. So maybe it was just my fault as a notary. I didn't hit the complete button. But you do want to try to complete your data, right? And that's just important for compliance purposes. But this here, this new functionality is something that we built in very recently to start expanding on. It allows you to add an email address of the signers in front of you. And this is the use case for that. This is how that would go. You get to the very end and you'd say, hey, would you like an email receipt of what we just did? And not a financial receipt. So you could say, would you like a record of what we just did sent to your email? They could say yes, they could say no, right? So number one, we're not trying to build something that's some CRM system that's forcing people to opt in and then you forever email them. What we're trying to do is make contact very easy between the signer, who hopefully liked your services, and you, if they ever need you again. Also, the other big point, of course, is if they need to request a notary entry from you. So we'll say, yes, love to see a record. Put their email in there and you hit the add button, and the back-end system is going to send them just a generated template email that says, great, here's who signed you, right? And the contact information down below. You see that's all my information. I could change it on the fly. So I could put, Best Notary LLC. I could put my company name. I could change that tagline if I'd like. And that's the information that they'll have to contact you in the future, right? So then we'll say, of course, they need a notary for a trust cert in a few months. They can always just say, oh, cool, I loved working with this guy. And I have an email. Let me just search my email box for this guy's name, maybe, or for the Notary eJournal or for Jurat. And they can easily find your contact information and then reach back out to you for future services. So this is something we're building out again, twofold. Allow them to contact you so you could build a better name for your brand, or if people want to be able to reach out to you, they can do that. And then secondarily, of course, if they need to ask for a notary journal entry, right now the process would be very difficult, right? How would they find out who notarized them? They'd have to look on maybe the document, the stamp, try to use that stamp's little cell phone, maybe they have a phone number, some stamps have a phone number. It would be a lot harder for them to contact you for that notary journal entry. And a lot of times they also need the name of the document when they request it. Otherwise, some states won't allow that request to happen, or they have that kind of step-by-step guidelines for how to do it. This provides them with all the information, but it does not provide them with a notary journal entry copy right away. So let me clarify by saying you're not just giving them all of that data that you have locked away to notary journal. It's just a very simple template of who you saw, what documents you've notarized, and then the contact information. And that way they can request it. So we find that to be something we're really excited about, because that just creates, opens a door for you to build a better name for yourself. And then of course, people that contact you easier, everybody's happy. So that's that new feature. If I hit complete, that's going to complete it. So I'm not going to do that because this is just a test entry. I'm going to be able to just go back to the history button right here, go back to my homepage. I can just delete that entire thing that I just did because it's still a draft. So yes, I want to delete that, and pow, that thing is gone. So the only other thing to point out, because we talked about the document library and the signing packages, you could alter that from the homepage right here. And this is something we are building out functionality for on the web, because people do say, I want to be able to do it on the web. And I said, I know. So we're working on that as well too, because that would be really nice to be able to edit that. But just remember that the web for us is a view and export only. So it is a little bit behind the live app that is more up to date, and that's why it's not available yet. But right now here, you could just add documents to your library. And again, this is your customized library. So everyone's got different documents they see more often than not. You could add that into your document library, have it forever. And the same goes for signing packages. That's your customized signing package list. You can go ahead and create that by saying, I want a new signing package. I'm going to name it B of A for Bank of America. That was N of A. B of A refi. That's what we're going to go with. And I'm going to say, I just want the notary fee. I can change that once I select it, so it's not a big deal. And I can just add whatever document I always see in that B of A. There's always two people, so I'm going to put 2 signature affidavits. I'm going to go ahead and hit add 5, and then I'm going to save that. And that's how I just save my signing package. Now, some of you guys that do general notary work, you might say, I'll never use that. I'm always doing a document on the fly that's got a name that I've never seen before. Totally fine. But for the signing agents and people who do the same lender or the same escrow company over and over again, this is a massive time saver to be able to just hit that button, populate it, and edit it and alter it if needed. So those are the last 2 features to focus on for this in-app live demo. Let me stop the screen share. And I really think I touched on everything I wanted to touch on. So I'm going to bring it back to Bill so that we can open up a Q&A and start talking to you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nick. I'm excited for you. Those are some super cool features, and I can see the stair steps to the possibilities of where you're going with this thing. So it's super cool. I want to first, Tracy has a great question just about what happens if you're going into an area that you're not going to have service. So she's just asking clarifier questions. So if you're going to use a tablet with a hotspot, but you have no service when you get there, is this where you would have to or would have wanted to log in with the tablet before you left home for the day? Or how does
correct? So we'll assume, for example, we'll just assume that you don't have a hotspot, right? So just to make it easy, if you don't have a hotspot, you're using a tablet, and you already know ahead of time, hey, I'm not going to have service, or I might not have service, right? We all go into those areas where you're like, I don't know, right? So you want to just sign in the morning. So you sign in the morning, 8, 9 a.m., make sure you're logged in, authenticated, and then you have 12 hours from that point in time, the server will not require authentication to function. So then you get out there a few hours later, app's going to work just fine. It'll have a few flags and indicators that say, hey, you're not online. Make sure you're very careful and make sure you upload everything. Once you get online, hit the sync button and then it'll sync. So if you have a hotspot, of course, and you get out in the middle of nowhere, you could sync it to the hotspot. You'd have connectivity, you'd have authentication in real time, so you wouldn't have to worry about that. The biggest issue that people run into is when they forget, of course, to have been logged in within the past 12 hours. Then they get out into the middle of nowhere. They have no service. And because you haven't been signed in yet, when you open up the app, you're going to see the login page. And we do get people who, from the login page, try to log in while offline, and then they rip me a new one by saying, you said it works offline. And I just have to remind people that yes, it works offline, but we don't have the power to authenticate you while offline. So for security purposes, that's something that we're not going to allow you to do, just unfettered access to the app while online or offline. That would be a lawsuit waiting to happen. So what we do allow is, again, you have 12 hours from your last point of authentication, but you do have to remember it. Otherwise, you might find yourself asking that person for their Wi-Fi, which I've done in the past. I have asked the homeowner for their Wi-Fi, and if they live there, I assume they have internet, which most of them do. But I hope that that clarifies that question. You do want to have a recent sign-in within 12 hours on that iPad, not on a different device, on that iPad. And then that iPad will have 12 hours of offline connectivity or offline functionality, if you will.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that Tracy, let me know if that did not answer your question, and we'll approach it differently. But that's crystal clear to me, and awesome. Let me just see if is there anybody who has a question that would like to raise their hand and ask Nick right now? That's totally fine too. As I scroll through, Melissa has a question. Melissa, thanks.
Hi, yes, I may have missed it or whatever. This is very new to me, but I see that you have already uploaded documents in there and named them, but how does it get in there? How does the document get in there? And then there's different forms of documents for different lenders. So how do we know we have the right one?
So the document library comes pre-populated with a bunch that we just put in there that we've seen over the years, but it's by no stretch an exhaustive list that can match the requirements of a nation of notaries in different states with different lenders. So what you want to do is every time you encounter a new document type, or if you already know a bunch of different document types that you don't see in that library, then from the library, document library, from the menu tab, we just hit add new type. Hit the button, and then you can add a new document type, name it whatever you'd like, link it to an acknowledgement, a jurat, or there's another option so that you could just manually type in a different type of notarial certificate. If you're using something different, just put the most commonly seen ones, and you just hit save, and it'll be forever available to you in your document library. And you would just repeat that process for all the new documents that you work with that you don't see currently in that library. And remember, you could search in that library as well too. Just search in the search bar, maybe put the word deed, and everything that's grant deeds, deeds of trust, those are going to pop up. And that way everybody can kind of see what's already available to them, and then you can alter it from there. Hopefully that answers that question.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And just to clarify too, Melissa, I just want to make sure we're on the same page too, is that documents are not scanned into the app. Those are just labels for the type of document that you're notarizing. So you don't have to scan documents in there, and they're not stored in there.
I guess confusing this. So this is, you're in front of the people, but you're doing it. This is the electronic signing app in front of the person.
No, this is not an iPen. This is a regular loan signing, Melissa. But instead of using your paper journal, you're using this electronic journal.
Okay, I got it. I'm sorry. I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for being here. Jeff Clark, always a pleasure to see you. What's happening?
Hello. So I've been using the journal for 6 months, Nick, and thanks for calling me and solving all my issues. But
I recognize your name. I always love hearing from you because you always have something that is important for me to know. A lot of times you'll say something in that submission. I say, that guy is onto something, we got to talk to our developer. So thank you, Jeff.
So yeah, so the biggest issue that I have is, and it's always comes up, and it happened to me last night, is if I'm at a signing, I don't have Wi-Fi capability, or I don't have internet capability because I'm in an area, even though I'm in the Bay Area, I'm in areas where there's no cell service. I can't add a document. And I talked to you about making that an offline issue, or so we can do that. I'm just wondering if that's going to be
That is
in the works.
absolutely being built in as well, to having the ability to have an app function offline, and then to alter your entire database and then require that to sync when you get back online is so much more difficult than I wish it was. But absolutely, because you brought that request up many times, being able to make adjustments to signing packages, for example, as well too, when you're offline, and then have that sync back online. That is something that we are building out of a corner case, meaning it's not something that we run into very often, but it's something that people like yourself run into enough to where we say, yeah, we got to be able to provide that offline functionality and then sync it, and then confirm that that most recent sync is going to, when it overrides anything else, be the most up-to-date and accurate version of data that we need to capture and sync with your profile. It's absolutely being built out right now. I'd say the first half of the year, you'll see that that functionality, and it'll be very seamless, because it's not like a big show with awesome flowers and confetti. That's just a kind of a bare bones basic functionality that we do want to provide. So yes, we're working on it, Jeff. Thanks so much.
Okay, yeah, that's the biggest challenge I have. Other than that, it's all good, so.
Awesome. Good. Well, always good to hear from you, Jeff, and always reach out to me. Even if I don't respond to some of those submissions, I see them all. I add them all to our list. So please keep doing what you're doing, Jeff.
All right, we got some great questions in the chat, guys. We will get to those as well. We're just going to move into the people who have their hands raised right now. John, great to see you on today.
Hey, Bill, how you doing?
Excellent.
Good. Quick question. So you need to get the fingerprint reader. How do you get the discount that you have to get it the cheapest?
So the fingerprint reader, if you go through our website, or you see any of the links that link to Biometric, which is our preferred vendor, they already have their price reduced for that product down to $132 for anybody who orders it. And I think what I encountered was that commercially distributed to normal people like you and I, fingerprint scanners, is something that these vendors have not really seen much of. And so when I approached them, I said, look, you're not just going to be getting requests from government agencies or bigger name biometric industry leaders. You're getting regular people who are just one-offs who need one device. For them, they were able to say, okay, well, it's not going to be the commercial price. We'll just reduce the price down to $132. So when you go to Biometric, the price will already be discounted. You don't have to do anything else on that.
All right, thank you.
You got it.
Great question. Linda Stern, nice seeing you on. How can we help?
Hi, so first of all, I just want to say the Biometric customer service is top notch. They sent me the wrong one initially, and I called them, and they had it in FedEx the next day, and I got it the day after, and then I just had to return the wrong one after that. It was fantastic. Second of all, just want to give Biometric a nice plug there.
Awesome.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sure can.
Okay. And so I also want to echo Jeff. I live in Kern County, and I'm surrounded on 3 sides by mountains, which I frequent. So I'm normally cut off from the internet when I go up there. So that's a huge thing with adding documents, if I miss one when I'm at home. So I'm glad to hear you're working on that. Now, the last thing is when you're adding documents, I noticed that I could add a compliance agreement as a jurat, and then separately a compliance agreement as an acknowledgement. Is that intended?
Yes, absolutely. So we do get a lot of times the request for people to be able to alter either on the fly, which you can do, or just add multiple document types with different notarization types. And you can do that on purpose. Sometimes we've all seen a leader throw in a signature name affidavit, for example, that all of a sudden now has an acknowledgement and not a jurat, or vice versa. And being able to alter that and then save that to your library, absolutely intentional.
Okay, fantastic. Now, I've been having a little bit of a problem with that. I've been encountering times where I'll put one in as a jurat and one in as an acknowledgement, and then I won't ever see, like, let's say, the acknowledgement that I put in second until I delete the jurat, and then I'll see the acknowledgement. So sometimes they're getting hidden.
And is that when you're viewing the entry, a finalized entry that's been saved, or is that still
it's
in
when
step 3?
It's when I'm searching for, like, it's when I'm searching for the document. So when
Okay.
I'm trying to add a document, I know I put one in as a jurat, one in as an acknowledgement. I will only see, for example, the jurat and not the acknowledgement. And then I'll have to delete the jurat and put the, and then add the acknowledgement.
And what happens when you try
to be a little
to,
bit of a bug.
what happens when you try to just scroll down the document list instead of search for it? What happens when you try to scroll down and just look at that list of most recently used and in alphabetical order after that? Do you see both of them, or do you not remember trying that? Do you typically just search?
I typically just search.
Okay, I'm going to add that to my list right
Okay.
here to talk to my developers about. Maybe it is a just when you search, the search is pulling only one of them. That sounds like it could
Right.
be just an issue that the backend is having with that search.
Yeah.
But I'd be very curious, of course, as to when you're scrolling through, I want to ensure that you still see that document listed there since you added. I would assume, of course, it is there because I haven't heard anybody else make that complaint, but that's very important insight for me. Let me just write a note on that. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And so, yeah, it's not every time, but it does happen frequently enough to warrant looking into, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, you got it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Linda. Ramon Vasquez, thanks for being here.
Hey, how are you, Bill and Nick? Good afternoon, both of you.
Hey.
Hey, Nick, I'm from New Jersey. I'm I'm using Notary Act right now as we speaking. I have a few questions because I just came in late to the Zoom meeting. So I would like to know how much the price, because as you know, here in New Jersey we don't require thumbprints. And in the case that I do this, jump to your eJournal, and I don't know if there's a merge option to merge all my notary entries to your application. And about the acknowledgement and jurat, probably you're not familiar with Notary Act, that every time that I do the entry for each document, I need to type it out, the title of the document, and this is a jurat or analog or ACK. So they give me a pop-up window to select what kind of notarization I'm doing. So those gonna be my questions. So you have something similar, something like they offer it right now. Thank you.
You got it. Good. So good question. So I'll start working backwards because that's how my memory works. When you add a document to the library, you can select whether it's an acknowledgement or a jurat, and it'll be forever tied to that. Now, if you're in the middle of a signing and you add a document, we'll just say trust certification, and you realize that you need to change it from acknowledgement to jurat for whatever reason, you can do it on the fly by just hitting edit notarization type, which is on the document card once you're adding it to the signing itself. So you can change those on the fly, and then whatever's already in your document library, of course, will still remain what it was. And then what the last person was asking as well too, Linda Stern was talking about this, was your document library, excuse me, can support multiple document types with different notarization types. So it could be, for example, a signature name affidavit that's got the same name, but one has an acknowledgement link to it and one has a jurat link to it. And that way, when you select it, it's going to be the right one that you want. We do have some people who do that because they just like to be able to do it quick instead of adjust it on the fly. So that is already in there. And we do have another type as well too. There was a question in, excuse me, in the chat about a hybrid signing and something that required a different type of notarization. Maybe it's a jurat and acknowledgement. Now, anytime you need to do anything other than just jurat or acknowledgement, you'll just hit the other option, and you can manually type out whatever you would want to plug in for that notarization type. Acknowledgement and jurat are always tied to the document in the library. And then when you add a new document type to the library, you just link it that way. So super easy. You did have one question about the price. It's monthly, $9 a month, $90 a year, unless you're going through Bill Soroka's partnership that we have with him. In that case, it's going to be a little bit of a different price with his promo codes. But the thumbprint scanner is a one-time purchase of $132, but you don't have to do that, and that's not a requirement for the app to function. Right? That's only for people who either A, want it, or B, are in California, so it's a requirement. So a lot of our users we have huge user bases in states like Texas and Florida. Florida doesn't even have a journaling requirement by law, at least unless it has changed recently, then that's still the case. California is the only one that requires that thumbprint, and if you don't have that requirement, then you don't have to purchase that. But that doesn't alter the price of the product itself, the app itself. And then I think the second question, Bill, do you remember what he asked? The second question was
the merge. So the merge all the entries from Notary.
Oh,
Act.
yes. So I don't have the option to merge any of that information. We have had requests before for people wanting to populate that in, and it's a fine line between what's compliant with law, what are we legally permissible to do, and that's one of the things where we haven't even allowed people to do that, because I think there are too many areas where it would be not legally permissible to take that data that happened in the past. Same way I don't recommend for people to take their hardbound journal entries and manually enter them in here unless it's happening at the same time and they're trying to make a transition. If it happened in the past, I would just keep it in whatever medium it was in. That would be my personal recommendation, but I'm also not a lawyer. So we don't have the option to merge. I don't know if we're ever going to have that option to merge. The only time I can see merging possible is, and people have touched on it in the chat, is when we try to get towards the point where we integrate with RON providers. So yes, that's something that we really want to do, building out integration with RON providers. And the way I envision that looking is being able to just log into your Jurat Notary eJournal profile within the ecosystem of that RON provider, and then they would push that data to the app, and then we'd be able to keep it synced with us, because all these RON providers have all these different platforms, and then they just keep their data separately, and that's legally permissible, but I think having it all in one place would be better. So we do want to look at integration where we could either do it live, like I just talked about, or being able to export those points of data that you capture in the record of transaction from the RON provider, and then being able to upload that. And that is something that I am looking at this year very, very heavily. But I don't think merging from the past, the way you're talking about, is something we can do, Ramon.
All right, that was a very in-depth answer, Nick. Thank you. I think you hit on it. Ramon, did we get all your questions answered? Ramon, he's so blown away that he's speechless right now. All right, we'll come back if there's any other further questions. Kristen Weiss, always a pleasure to see you on.
Good morning. How's everyone doing? Hi, Nick. Nice to see you on the screen.
Hello.
I'm really excited for you to share your journal. I'm a huge supporter. I beta tested the system back in December 2020. We have a mutual friend and that introduced us. And so amazing. It literally has changed my life, like straight across the board with my business. You want efficiency, it's going to give it to you. And it's been fantastic. I haven't gotten anything but positive feedback with loan officers I've partnered with, lenders. I mean, everybody loves it. The signers love it. They love that it's professional, efficient, and that you can get it done quick. And you're not, keeping them at a signing for, hours on end. So anyways, I just wanted to give you a shout out. And if anybody's in San Diego and has any questions, I'm available because I've been using it for over a year. I've logged over, I think 750 closings. So it's been fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Love that. Mike Howard, thanks for being here too. You're a fellow Arizonan.
Yes, thanks for having me. And Nick, I absolutely love your product, but my problem is in Arizona, it's a little backwards. We can do RON, but we can't do an electronic notary journal. So do you have any suggestions for how we can talk to, representatives, senators, the Secretary of State barely listens, but do you have any suggestions for how we could bring this to Arizona?
Gosh, that Arizona is such a funny one, because I saw that, and then when they adopted Ron, in my mind, I was saying, great, that state's going to be fine, no problem. And then for some reason, they added in there the caveat with some extra wording saying that that you still can't do an electronic notary journal if you're doing paper in-person entry notary. I find it so weird, and I don't have an answer, unfortunately, because it's such an out of left field kind of thing to see a Ron state not allow that electronic journal for in-person paper notarizations. I don't have an answer, and I hate to see it. I just hope that they're able to kind of see that maybe that wording is not a requirement. Now, they clearly find it important to make that distinction, but I guess we'll just see what the future holds. I wish I had something better for you, Mike. I'm sorry.
I appreciate your confusion by it also. So that does help.
It's so weird. Whoever's making the rules here does not seem to ask notaries. But like Mike made some good movement with his representative at one point on another issue, and they got excited about it. And then there's this wall of other notaries out here. So it's weird. Or who's ever calling the shots. That's great. Now we have lots of great questions inside the chat. So I'm going to jump in here. And so just to answer all the questions about the replays, guys. Yes, of course, I'm recording. I'm going to replay this thing. I'll put it on YouTube, and I'll send you out an email reminder whenever that's ready as well. So you can watch this later if you missed the beginning or parts of the demo for sure. Nick has some great videos on his website as well that you can check out at juratinc.com. And I want everybody to know that Nick has hooked you up with a really great deal for Notary Coach subscribers, followers, audience. If you're here, you get the deal. $1 for your first month, $9 a month after that, or $70. Is it $70? Yes, $70 for your entire year if you pay for a year in advance. And I'll type that into the chat as well. For those who are watching the replay, you can go to notarycoach.com/eJournal and get that deal. Okay, so one of the questions Daryl says is, will this data automatically get sent to the IRS for an audit?
Absolutely not. That would be, gosh, that is not our role. We are, and interestingly, we do get a lot of people who ask questions similar in terms of data sharing, and in order for anybody to request data, it would need to come from the notary themselves. Or somebody asked one time, what happens if the notary is deceased, they pass away, family members, how do they get that notary journal to turn to the SOS? And they would reach out to us directly and provide some verification. But it doesn't get sent automatically to anybody for an audit. If you do get audited, then you'd have to provide whatever is being requested to them through the exporting features that we have there for you. So again, right now, the exporting features are month to month, and we'll say they want to audit 6 months worth. You could just do that. And then we talked about earlier, we are building more robust export features so that people can export for a specific period of time or dump the entire journal if you needed to do that. But that's how you would provide, you would comply with an audit. You would pull that from your own online portal, and then you would just export it and then send it to whoever's requesting for it or print it out. I guess the question somebody just put in there, can the IRS even ask to see our notary journal? I don't know. I don't think that's the entity that would be doing the audits unless there was some really big case going on. Typically, I just see it on a local level, the local municipalities, or on the state level. And of course, everybody knows Laura Buer, and she's the queen of knowing that sort of thing and having gone through audits. I think she'd probably confirm that it's not really the IRS doing it. It would be another, but it would be an equally legally binding important entity that you'd have to comply with. And of course, you'd be able to do that with the PDF exporting. So that one, hopefully that answers that question there.
Yeah, and I think too, just to add some clarity around some of the other questions too, is that the journal that we're talking about, the eJournal, is a notary journal, and that's what it is. really cool, but it's not a marketing tool. It's not a bookkeeping system. It's none of those things. This is your notary journal, designed to meet certain requirements for that too. So Nick, do you run into issues or concerns with data sharing before that reason? Is that why you've chosen to make those limitations on this?
We haven't run into any issues, but we build it from the ground up with the understanding that we want to make sure that we are very, very strict with how data is accessed and who can access it, because especially in California law, we do have you know, a little bit of a different set of requirements, of the wording's a little bit different, and there's just an emphasis on making sure that you are being very careful with that data, and you're not just sending it out all willy-nilly to whoever's requesting it. And it's actually a great question talking about who can access the data and how it's compliant. And I want to throw a screen share up there one more time to touch on this in terms of California compliance, and in terms of you know, requesting data and making sure that nobody can do it other than you. So I'm going to throw this up here on the screen. This is a PDF that we use to help people understand California government code and the compliance with it. And so it's a little bit of a segue question. I'm touching on this. I feel like I beat a dead horse a lot when I talk about this. And so if you heard this spiel, you know, please just bear with me, because more and more users means more eyeballs. And I can't tell you how many times I got off Facebook about a year ago, and I get so many people reaching out to me and they say, can you please go into this Facebook group and help me, because there are people just trashing your app, and they are just destroying it, saying that it's not compliant. And so what I'm talking about is that there's a huge camp of people in California who believe that it's not compliant with California Government Code 8206A. And I'll preface by saying there's nothing I could do to change their mind, nor do I want to try to feel like somebody's strong-armed into changing their opinion on the code. But I do want to show you guys what we're talking about with how we can ensure we're compliant with 8206A. And we do look at, of course, the verbiage that is used in the journal as the most important. Are we compliant with whatever wording California Secretary of State is saying? And what we notice first is that they talk about the journal being sequential. All acts must be performed as a notary sequential journal, locked and secure area under direct and exclusive control of the notary. Now we point out, because this is where it's going to get hairy, direct and exclusive control. And this is where I'm touching on it from that most recent question about who controls data and who can access it, who can request it. It's always under the control of the notary. Nobody else can request that data unless they were able to provide proof that there was a deceased notary and we have their information, for example. But you notice a lack of verbiage describing the physical attributes. It does not state it has to be a paper or a hardbound journal. There are states that have that verbiage in there. Hawaii does require it to be bound, and it gives you dimensions. So that would clearly make our product non-compliant with California law. But we don't have that here, so we keep going. Cloud-based solutions. This is where people start to say, okay, it's not under the direct and exclusive control. So this is a talking point for notaries who are concerned with violating the current code by using a cloud-based solution. And they say, well, if it was synced to just the device locally, that would be okay. Now, for anybody who knows much about technology, coding, app, data security, that would be infinitely less secure than a cloud-based solution. If you just tried to carry around your notary journal's data on your phone, it was somehow only held within the phone itself, that would be a nightmare. And many people don't realize how secure cloud-based solutions are. But we have to look, has a California Secretary of State ever stated that the cloud-based journal violates the code? The answer is no. We look around other states, every SOS interprets things differently, but Colorado uses the same verbiage, very similar. Journal is kept in a secure area under the exclusive control of the notary. And then they further state that it can be electronic or tangible, meaning hardbound journal. So we look for comparisons, okay, same wording, electronics fine in Colorado, that could help. But okay, the nail in the coffin for this discussion point, and this is important for anybody in California to take note right here, right? Under the direct and exclusive control and cloud-based solutions. Are you still on the fence about this issue? This last point will help. 8207 is California code right after the journal that talks about the stamp. And it has the same verbiage. The seal shall be kept in the locked secure area under the direct and exclusive control of the notary. So of course, the requirements are uniform and consistent. Now, if a cloud-based electronic solution were to violate this text, then the California SOS would not be providing permits for people to manufacture electronic notary seals. Now, as it stands, of course, they do. California SOS has permitted manufacturers like the NNA, we all know them and trust them, to produce and manufacture an electronic notary seal. Now, there are specific guidelines that they have to follow, different than a notary journal, right? The California SOS does not provide the requirement for a journal manufacturer to get a permit and approval. Only the seal, of course, because you have a high likelihood of fraud if anybody could just produce a seal for anybody, right? But most people in California already say, what in the world are you talking about? Why would I need an electronic seal? But it's for IPIN, in-person electronic solutions, right? So even though nobody really does those in California, or they're very rare, it's still permissible for California notaries to perform an IPIN, and you would need an electronic solution, both an electronic solution provider for the stamp, then you would take that stamp and then you would have to plug it into some type of cloud-based solution for the IPIN providing software, meaning where the document's uploaded and then the interface in which that's signed in. Now, all of that stuff has multiple layers of you putting something up into a cloud-based solution. And if the verbiage of under the directness of control of the notary were not able to coexist with a cloud-based solution, it would be very simple. California SOS would not allow those electronic notary seals to be manufactured. As it stands, of course, they do. So that's the point I'm trying to make regarding compliance in California. So circling back to the question, nobody else can access that data except you, unless, of course, you pass away and then we deal with your inheritance, your estate. But other than that, we're not just sending data to anybody. And of course, it's still under the direct and exclusive control of the notary. And no, it is our, of course, professional opinion, although we're not lawyers, that it's not something for you to have concern about, seeing that the stamp is treated the same way we're treating the notary eJournal. So I hope that does clarify a little bit about it. I do see somebody's in there saying, I thought the California said we needed a spiral journal. So no, there's no, we looked at the verbiage just a moment ago. Bound does not say bound, does not say spiral, does not say anything about it being required to be in a tangible medium or being hardbound. And again, some states have that requirement, but California does not. The wording they use is that it just has to be one active sequential journal, and that is the only descriptive text that they provide. So that is how we look at that from a legal point of view, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. I think that did a great job. I'm so glad you brought up those slides on California too. That is the biggest question I get about your journal too, is always from California. Can we use it? Can we use it? And I think that gives us a lot of information to make that decision. Dan has a question in the chat. He says, sometimes you have two signers, but one signer only signs 2 of the 10 documents. And in the Notary eJournal, the top number of notaries shows as 10, but should show as 12. Can the app be edited to accommodate this?
Dan, are you in the room? I will provide clarification as to what you're at, or maybe Bill, do you understand that better than I do?
It just sounds like, so you know how sometimes you might have a spouse that does not sign all the documents, only signs 2 of them. But it sounds like the tally of number of notarizations only shows as 10 when it should show as 12 in the app. Dan, is that correct? He may have jumped off of here.
Okay, yeah, I don't see him chiming in anymore.
We'll circle back.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Now, counting notaries and notarizations is something that people do ask for a lot. They want to just kind of have a head count at the end of how many documents were notarized. And so we are working on building out the ability to just display numbers better for data points that people are looking for. And another one that people request all the time is having just a numerical value being tagged to the notary entries in your journal. And right now it's sequential, but it does not just have a entry number 1 next to it, entry number 2, entry number 3. This was actually something that was very difficult to try to build out on everybody's individual on the back end how is the backend going to be able to distinguish between all of these different types of sequential requirements for numerical order and then our sequential unique identifiers. So it's something that we are looking at, is just providing a little bit of a better numerical expression of certain things. And that might help what Dan's talking about, but I'm not quite sure.
Well, he just jumped back in.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Maybe somebody messaged him. Dan, are you here? Dan? All right, maybe not. Different Dan. So, but I wanted to bring Jessica up. She had her hand up a few moments ago, and she got an interesting email from Secretary of State. Jessica, are you ready?
Hi, yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah, sure
Yes.
can. Hi.
Okay, so two things. So I actually reached out when I started using the eJournal. I did reach out to the Secretary of State, and I do have 2 emails from 2 different representatives saying that as long as the eJournal is compliant with the codes, then we are eligible to use them. So that's why I have moved forward and have been using it, and I absolutely love it. Another question I have, so just to confirm, so let's say a deed of trust has husband and wife. So is that considered one document with 2 signers versus, let's say, a signature name affidavit? Each signer has their own individual document. And does that make it 2 documents, or is that still considered one document because there's still 2 signers? I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes sense. It makes it a great question. We would count based on essentially how many stamps you put on the paper, which would correlate to how many notarizations took place. If you have if you have 2 signers on a deed of trust, that would be 1 stamp. That would be 1 document being notarized once because their signature names are both on it, unless you count their signed and one spouse was in a different location at a different time. And then the same goes for if you have those 2 signature name affidavits. They each have their own. That's 2 stamps. That is 2 different documents and 2 total notarizations.
Got it. And then I have one more question. So I know right now when we do the app, let's say we're inputting the appointment time, it's 5 p.m. But once the appointment finishes and let's say it's 5:50 p.m., it automatically updates to 5:50 p.m. on that initial first screen. Is there a way where we're able to have, because like, you know, when we're doing our calendar and stuff, it's like 5 p.m., but then it updates to 5:50 p.m., but then you go back to your notes and you're like, wait, did I meet with them? I know that on the back end, it has everything chronological, but is there a way where we can like have that switched, or is there a reason why it is like that?
The reason it's like that is because it's beginning to sort your journal sequentially based on that completed timestamp. And the moment you put that completed timestamp in 55 minutes later, or whenever it was, that's when the system says, okay, great. Now that we have a finalized entry, we're going to treat it as it needs to be treated, which is sequential, and then everything's sequential based on that completed timestamp. And that's a feature in there that allows us to remain sequential while allowing notaries to create multiple drafts. Because one issue people would have is that if they wanted to create multiple drafts, say you try to create 1, 2, 3, 4 drafts, but what if they're not in the right order for which you are supposed to perform those notarizations? Yeah. If you were doing it with a hardbound journal, you'd kind of be stuck where you'd have to make your journal non-sequential, or maybe just lie about it, or be not compliant with the state code. Or you just couldn't take any signings between those. Like, what if something pops up last minute and you had a draft plugged in there already, and you're like, I'm like, what are you going to turn down the business? So for us, we bypass that by logging everything sequentially based on that completed timestamp. But what that does create is a situation where you see the order of, on the top, you might see things that aren't sequentially ordered based on draft creation time. And then as you scroll down more, all your finalized entries become sequential based on that one important completed timestamp. And I don't think that we're going to change that for legal purposes. I don't think that we want to change that.
So I guess we would just put it in our notes, like appointment time 5 p.m., just so that we can remember, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you could totally do that. I see what you're saying. It would have been nice to be able to keep that original appointment time. And that's the data point that we don't even worry about, because it's either when did you start it, when did you complete it, when did it upload. But I see what you're saying. And maybe there's some wiggle room for us to put in another field of appointment time, just so that people can capture information in their journal that they like to keep. Okay, I'm going to put that in the notes. That's a good recommendation, Jessica. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Other than that, everything else is great. I absolutely love it. But yeah, I mean, as far as California, we are good to go.
That's
Awesome.
That's awesome that she said that. And you know, kind of touching on that, we had a lot of people reaching out to the SOS, and Jessica clearly is one of them. And we encountered a few months ago an issue where the SOS, the people who were picking up the phones, they were giving mixed signals to people. And so I had people reach out to me and say, hey, I just called the SOS office and they said one thing. And then I called the SOS office and they said a different thing. And my friend called. So then I said, okay, well, let me hop in on this bandwagon. Let me call them. So I called the Secretary of State's office in California, and I also got the same answer. I said, is a digital electronic notary journal permissible for use? And it was instant. It was no way. There is no way. This is what she was telling me. And then I said, ma'am, can you help me find in the code where it's not permissible? So I walked her through the code, and you know, she came back and essentially said, okay, you're right. I can't find anything that says you can't use it. But then she started to say, but it doesn't make sense. How would you do the thumbprint? And how would you do this, right? And I wasn't looking to go deep into it with her because I'm not trying to argue and points. I'm just trying to find out what the issue was. And so I sent off an email to that entire department. And the great thing was I sent off an email that pretty much just explained the situation I was having as a business owner with them harming our business by giving mixed signals. And the problem being that they just weren't having the right education for the staff answering the phones. And interestingly, within about 5 days, I had somebody email me back and they said, oh God, I just called them. And they said that they just had a meeting about the Notary eJournal and they gave me the green light, and I'm so excited and I'm so thrilled. And so it was nice to see that even though they didn't reply to me in my email, they clearly at least had a discussion with the people answering the phone saying, hey, look, we need to actually understand what 8206 says as a code and make sure that we're not giving bad advice, because we were encountering that issue. And it's just so important to understand that the California 8206 and the code itself is different than the position SOS holds as a, you know, I guess as an entity, right? And their job is not to just provide approval or denial of certain products. That's not what they do. They interpret the law and they help people understand what the law is, but they didn't write that law necessarily. They're just reading it the same way we are. And as long as they understand the same way we have to understand what law says, then we can be confident about what we're doing. So that was a great thing that you stepped up here, Jessica. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great question. A couple of quick questions here from the chat. Linda says, if you're in the middle of using your journal, but you want to try the eJournal and get the discount, will we be able to start the eJournal at a later date when our journal is completed? Nick, what do you have to say on that?
Great question. I do get that often as well too. The journal has to be sequential, but it doesn't have to be completed. So what I did and what I recommend people to do who want to hop over is just hop over. You can line out the rest of your entries on your regular journal that you're using, or you can even just not line it out, just put, you know, completed and finished on X date, maybe the most, you know, the next entry up, and then close it and do what you're supposed to do with your journal. There's no requirement for it to be a completed journal before moving on. So that's a preference if you'd like to wait. But I can't, what I do tell people is I can't always guarantee that maybe certain promotional things like the promo code that we have with Bill will be around forever, and it might not be around when you go to upgrade, depending on how long that will be. So I do say that you can't enact it now and then have it go for a later date, but you do have a 14-day trial period as well. So it's important to know that you have 14 days when you start that trial before you get prompted to upgrade, and that way you can tinker with it. And that's just my take on that, guys.
Beautiful, thank you. LaTanya Middleton, how can we help today? Welcome. LaTanya, there she is.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute here.
No worries.
So two things, one question, then one kind of, I guess, feedback, which somebody kind of touched on with Dan's question. With the signatures not adding up, I guess technically, I mean, if the spouse is signing the same document, that's not counted as another notarization because we're not counting stamps. And then someone just mentioned, of course, like if it's like a signature affidavit or something like that, that's two separate ones. So I would assume in that case, you would have to add two separate documents of the same type. in that scenario. And then my actual question was, I just wanted to clarify, because I know earlier you were talking about logging in the beginning of the day and getting the timestamp. And someone questioned about, I guess, adding the documents beforehand and maybe getting to the signing, and you have to add another document. Those scenarios or like cases like that, that's more so if you may have a chance of not having connection. Because I'm assuming, can you just add everything if you're at the table at that time, or do you have to pre-enter like all the documents you're going to be notarizing?
No, you could add it. You could add it ahead of time, or you could do it at the table. So, I mean, when we first started, we built this to be so efficient that you didn't have to prep entries. That was the whole point. But then we kept getting the request for that draft feature. So it was built out to be just done in front of the person at the time. You could just add those documents on the fly. Super quick, super easy. Just add a new document type, jurat, acknowledgement, or other, and then it's going to be what you're notarizing or what they're notarized. What they're signing and you're stamping. So on the fly or ahead of time, there's no requirement. Either way, you can do it either or.
Hey, thanks for clarifying. Yeah, I tried the other eNotary, I think it's eAct Notary Act a couple of months, well, it's probably over a year ago. And it was a little complicated. So I do like that you have all the documents already there and that you can, just check them off and add them. So I'm definitely going to give the app a try. And just one last thing, I'm assuming you log in so I can transfer if I'm using my phone for one sign, and then maybe I think about, okay, I'm going to pull out my iPad. I can just log in and go back and forth because just one app, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So you could hop between multiple devices. The only thing I like to point out, because it's cloud-based, so everything's synced to the cloud, but drafts aren't synced to the cloud. They're locally created. And that's what allows you to still kind of alter that data and still use it without having it locked away as a finalized entry. So drafts are not cross device. If you create a draft on your phone and you go out onto the field and you have your iPad and you go looking for that draft, you're not going to see it. It's not meant to function in that way. But everything else is synced across every single device. So as long as you just remember that the draft, if you create it on one device, finish it on that device. Don't try to finish that draft on a different device. But other than that, yeah, multiple devices, no problem.
Oh, okay. I'm so happy I asked that question, because not to take it somewhere else, but I know TikTok is like that. If you start a TikTok on one device and go to the next one, it's not in your draft. So I'm so happy I asked that question. Definitely good to know. That's all I got. Thank you.
All right, great question. Salisha, thanks for being here.
Hey, everybody. Happy Friday, TGIF.
Thank you. You too.
Hey, Nick. Nice to see you live and in person.
Hello, Salisha.
I'm one of his problem children, but then again, that's okay. I've been playing with this now. I'm in Florida, and we're not even required to keep a journal. But I wouldn't. What little I know, I wouldn't consider doing this without it. Is there a way? Because for whatever reason, the front of your driver's license looks one way, and then the back's got that stuff on the back. Is there a way to just say, I only want the stuff on the front? I really don't care about the stuff on the back? Or is really the stuff on the back what's really doing it?
The stuff on the back is really what's doing it. So that barcode right there contains that data that is actually the readable data. And it checks it by looking at the front, and then it grabs that data off the back barcode and confirms that they're the same. But it's you can't just do either or.
You can't do either or. Okay.
No.
Because I have to say, because it's nice that your driver's license lasts X number of years, but often it gets scratched or it gets ugly or black marks or whatever.
Did we lose her?
Yeah, she got frozen.
Did we lose me? Yeah, she's frozen. Salisha, we'll come back to you. Nick, I'm going to jump to a question maybe in the chat.
Awesome.
Did I lose you guys?
Yep, here you're back.
Okay, next question. Daughter of an English teacher. When I look at these things and it puts the person's address in, quite often it's not capitalized like the second word, like Amber Lakes. Like the lakes will be a little L. What's that about?
I like the word. These are very small, minute problems. I like that.
I know they are.
I'll put it in the notes for them for the developers when they pull it.
Like
I'll ask
Orange
them.
Park, Florida. Orange is one word, park is another word, but the P is not capitalized. And I know that's just like, you know, minute in the grand scheme of everything in the world today. I know it's minute, but I know
it's
you
valid.
right.
Yeah,
Right?
no, I'll add it to my list of things to talk to my developers about, and I'll see if that's something we do or if that's as the data is captured that it's what's provided to us. So
And
I'll put that on my list.
and I often see it's the and I know it's just a piece of code because I often see it's the second word. Like I said, Orange Park, Florida. It's the second word that doesn't get capitalized.
Okay. I've added that to my notes, Alicia. Don't worry, I'll look at it.
And other than that, you know, I'm pretty, you know, like I said, I'm learning with it, and you know, I'm trusting you, man. I'm walking out. I am I'm stepping out on faith.
Well, thank you. I love working with you when I called you last month, and I love you giving us a shot. And I will always do my best to stay in reachable arm's reach lengths. You guys can reach out to me and let me know what problems you're having. So thank you, Felicia.
Awesome. Katrina B, welcome.
Hello, how are you? I've been testing it out for a while and I enjoy the process. But one thing I wanted, and I'm still nervous about the pen strokes, but one thing I want to talk about was it happened recently with a military signer. I'm based in Virginia and the military signer had a Virginia license, but their address on the driver's license was based in New York. And they said, due to the military, you know, the state will allow for your military address. You have a Virginia license with a New York address. But when we went through the scanning process, the information that it populated implied that it was a New York driver's license. So I don't know if that's something due to just the way that picked up on the barcode. Should it have picked up as of a Virginia driver's license, or would it just normally just picked up due to the address being in New York? I don't know. That might be too specific.
Well, it sounds like a really interesting kind of edge case or corner case. You're saying the data it pulled was, the address was accurate. Is that what you're saying, or no?
Everything was accurate except that it was a New York driver's license opposed to a Virginia driver's license, and so that was an interesting thing that I was like, huh. But everything else was accurate. The numbers were accurate. The address was accurate. Like the Virginia driver's license number that I would normally use as a verification point was there. They just had it as New York versus Virginia. So
okay,
I thought that
sounds really weird. Really weird. I'd have to kind of see that in person to see what's going on. I'm happy that it scalped the data correctly and it was all what you saw on that ID. That's what really matters. And I guess it's important to point out you can always, of course, just manually edit all the data that is scalped. So if you scan it and you do find an issue with it, you can change that. But that would be a red flag for me if I was scanning that and it came in as something that was different than what was on the card. Then I would say, oh gosh, maybe I should ask some more questions about that ID. I don't know. That's a really interesting one. I wish I had a better answer for that military ID.
Yeah, no, it was just the signer was in the military, but the driver's license was a state driver's license. It just came out with a different I guess the home state of the person, because I had to ask a few more questions to make sure everyone was clear. But so I was just like, that was just something. And I don't know if it's just going to be for a small population of people who happen to have changed their driver's license to have an out-of-state address on their driver's license. So.
Yeah, well, good note though, and that's something for us to look at as well. So I appreciate that one, Katrina.
Not a problem.
Thank you. And then Katrina, you also had a question though about the retention deal. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, I was looking as I was going through and looking at signing up. I noticed that there was your retention policy for about cost per year. I was like, okay, well, is there a lifetime fee, and what happens if after the year will I no longer have access to the information, or what happens after like the year?
So the way it works is we do have a retention subscription. So to start, at any point you have your active subscription as a notary. If you cancel your subscription, we'll retain your data for 30 days. will keep prompting you over and over again. Hey, by the way, we don't retain data forever. So you might want to come back and take a look here and figure it out. But then after 30 days, we'll flag you and we'll say that, okay, finally, we've let you know that we don't keep it anymore. We're going to delete your data. That's just a normal user doesn't want to use us anymore. And then they don't want to pay for the retention subscription. Now, the retention subscription is $2 a month or $20 a year. And that's for people who might be in between commissions, or they don't want to, they're not an active commission, but they still want to access their data through the app and through the web portal. And that's just either a monthly $2 or yearly $20 price. And that just gives you access to the app and to the web interface forever with the secure storage of all of your data, to where you could always access it, export it, search for it, but you just can't create any new signings anymore. That functionality is kind of barred out for you. You can't use that. So that's again, you re-up that subscription price as well to $2 a month, $20 a year, and we'll retain your data for as long as you keep paying. But then 30 days after that point is when you would be finally removed, and we will flag you a million times and let you know, hey, by the way, your subscription is not active anymore because this is sensitive data. We don't want any accidents to happen where people are just like, oh crap, my credit card changed over and then you guys just deleted all my stuff. So we're very careful about that. But that's how did I answer that question there?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Awesome.
And then
Awesome.
Attila asked a question, but I don't know how you can make that any faster. That's the fastest fingerprint upload I've ever seen. How can you make the fingerprint upload process made faster?
So, and Attila, he asked a question as well about the charging it as well. So, Jeff, thank you for chiming in, because Jeff says charge it every week, which is definitely responsible. Depending on how often you use it, of course, is how often you want to charge it. I charge mine maybe once a month. The charge holds for a long time, and I only turn it on at the point when I'm on step 5 and I need to start using it. So for me, it's like, okay, great. I don't have to worry about keeping it on prior to or after. I just turn it on, capture the thumbprints, turn it back off, and the thing will last me for a long time. I find myself plugging it in just to make sure that it's not going to die for some weird reason, but that's just me being concerned because I haven't charged it for so long. But every week is a great piece of advice from Jeff, and that touches on that one from Attila. But then the other one was, of course, can you make it faster? We continually improve the efficiency of everything. That was quick. I'd consider that pretty darn quick, Bill. But I'd like to be able to make it faster and faster for people. And I think we're going to be able to, just as we update the app. Now, you guys do see a lot of times we get weekly or every other week updates on this app. And so we do tell people, make sure you're on the latest version of the app, because we typically do weekly or every other week bug fixes and minor enhancements. And optimizing that Bluetooth upload speed is always something that we take a look at. So I feel like it's good, but Attila's bringing up a good point. Not good enough for some people. We'll work on that for you.
Awesome. Tori says she's testing out the signature on the iPad now. Is there some way to change the pressure on the pencil to make it more fine point?
Tori, we are working. You're not the first one to get me on this one. Just the pen stroke adjustments, the customizing the width, and being able to make it a little bit more responsive. That's something that we're working on, and we plan to have a solution in place in the next few months for pen stroke, just in general across the board, making it a little bit more fluid. We do find that people either love it or hate it, but that also is something that we see for all electronic signature applications. People are either like, gosh, this looks horrible, or it was pretty smooth, right? So I always keep my stylus with me and then allow people to use a stylus or their finger. And I also just use it on my phone. So it's a tight writing space for a lot of people, and people do complain about that. Whereas people with the iPad, I get far more, I guess, or less frequent requests from iPad and tablet users. So we're definitely working on that, Tori, just making the adjustments to be customizable and a little bit better for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. And Paula says, silly question. She's got a whole household full of notaries that all do their own work. Is there a group package for a family, or do we all have to have our own account?
So definitely everyone's going to have their own account. And that's, I wish we could find a better deal in terms of being able to do something like that. But because of just, I guess, the requirement that it is in place right now for every notary to be controlling that data, especially in California, direct initial control. You got to have your own account to do that, and that's how that looks as it currently stands. That's our price structure.
And Nick has already hooked us up with a really great deal, guys. It's, if you want to do the annual subscription, it's only $70 per user. So that's a great deal. Or you can do the monthly subscription, $1 for your first month, $9 for each additional month after that. Jeff Clark, I'm glad you made it back.
Yeah, my appointment didn't show up. So the question I had is on the on the signature. So I use an iPad. On the signature section, it's completely full. And what I have that happens is people touch the screen and it screws the whole thing up. I'm just wondering if it's possible to maybe shrink that down so that if they do touch it, there's a smaller square. Because you have that whole, on the iPad, the whole thing, you can sign the whole, it's larger to sign, but then when you save it, their signature is very small anyway. So I don't know if there could be something to alleviate that sensitivity of the whole screen. So if they do lean on there, they're not going to have to start over on their signature. So that's the one thing that I've run across with the iPad. I know with the phone, it's a little different because it's smaller. You don't have that issue as much as a larger tablet. So that was
it's a good suggestion, and it's something I'm going to write down right now. Obviously, sometimes you'll work with some type of software like image editing and stuff, and they where you like drawing apps, and they do a great job of removing the pressure from your palm. So that's definitely something for us to look into, and to just being able to maybe reduce that box on an iPad, or give you the option to customize how big you want it to be, and reducing the pressure from that palm, from other parts touching the screen. Right, it's never perfect, but I hate when it's enough of a sour point for you to have an issue with. So I'll make a note on that one, Jeff. That's a good one.
It's more of an issue on older signers where they're bedridden or something like that. That's where I've had the most issues, and that's why I bring it up. It's not to cause issue with yours.
No. These are valid points. I want all complaints. I love it because that's how we get better. So thank you for that, Jeff.
All right, awesome. And guys, I think we're going to have our last question with Andrew Wood.
I have a question.
All right, I'll come right back to you. Okay, Lady Sunshine Strong?
Okay, thank you.
You got it. Andrew Wood.
Hello. First, I just want to say thank you for this. It's obviously, this has been the easiest journal I've ever used. It's just so streamlined. But I wanted to echo the last commenter with the iPad. What I have, they use the Apple Pencil. I haven't used that when they're signing their name, but they'll often rest their wrist on the iPad, and at the bottom, it's right where the reset button is. So very often they'll reset their signature after they've signed. So just if, like you mentioned, if there's any way to customize that or anything, that would just be an awesome feature. It's not a huge issue, just something to note.
Okay, thank you for echoing that, because the more people that echo something, the higher it moves up on my list. So thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that.
Awesome. All right. And then Lady Sunshine Strong, thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm here. I've read a lot about your company and the services that you offer. My question is, I do not use a tablet and I do not use a smartphone. I use a desktop. And so I do online notarizations. So I did not read anything thus far how it would work in that capacity. And does it have a built-in text-to-speech? Or is it all like dynamics where it's all images?
So these are good questions. Text-to-speech is typically provided by the device you're using. So for example, when I'm on my iPhone and I have a text box, the keyboard pops up and I can do text-to-speech, that's no problem. But that is dependent on whatever device you're using. It's not something that we have to build in separately as an app a software developer. So it would be dependent on whatever you're using. And that means that if you're only using, we'll say, a desktop, I would find that to be much less a frequent feature you find on desktop than you would find on a mobile device. And that goes to start touching on your first question, which is, it sounds like you're not doing any in-person notarizations at all. And your question is, okay, well, how do I handle this through the web? We don't have users that only use our product RON providers. Now, we do want to work towards integrating with RON to allow that data to be captured and held. And that's mainly for the use case of people who do both, because RON is so new. The majority of notaries are just used to doing old-fashioned notarizations in person. And now we have more options in certain states. So we do want that all-inclusive journal that holds all of that data. That's something we're working on. But for people who are of a newer class of notary, you only do RON. Typically, the service provider for that RON software provider will retain the records that are required by law within that ecosystem, and you can usually export it. But right now, we don't have a use case for people to use our product, which is a replacement for the hardbound journal, and use that when they're only doing a RON based, I guess, set of notarizations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I use assistive technology for being sight impaired. And so I wanted an electronic journal, and that's what somebody had mentioned to me, your company. And that's how I was able to go on my computer and read about your company. It's a cool feature if you're sighted and you can use a smartphone. I just wanted to implement that same information on how I do it, which I do it completely all online.
Okay. And that's definitely something that when we start working on that integration piece, then that would provide a solution for people like you who are looking for that. But until we're able to successfully integrate with RON providers, we aren't able to support anything that goes along those lines just quite yet.
Now you're saying RON providers as other platforms. As a notary, I don't use any of those platforms. None of them. I actually, your product actually inspired me to make an accessible format of the Notary Journal. So I thank you for that. And I did it very simplistic with everything that is on the Notary Journal to begin with. The only thing that I did not implement, which I thought it was a really cool feature, was the fingerprint. I really would like to see what you have created and your labor of love being transformed into that we can use it online without having to pay a monthly fee for other ROMs and other services where we're only paying your company for that service.
I see. Okay. So, and I'm writing notes as you're talking. So this is all getting logged. I appreciate the input. I think what you're looking for is definitely realistic when we get to the route, because when we get to the route where we would integrate with RONs, if we can get there, that would provide online functionality that would mirror what you're looking for, that would allow you to do it without being a part of, we'll say, Notarize or Notary Cam. So I think that's something that's completely realistic when and if we get there. And I think you're a little bit of ahead of the curve with wanting that one. And I hope that we can get there for you.
I think that if you create a template of what you already have, and you have that little box for the fingerprint, and you somehow, I'm not a computer person with regards to any kind of techie, I just read a lot of articles to kind of keep myself educated as to how things work and why do things go A and B and C. There's a platform that you're using that if you're giving that service, it doesn't have to be directly filtered through another company, just your company.
Right. I see exactly what you're saying. Yep.
Excellent suggestions. I'm so glad you were here. Lady Sunshine Strong. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. I just want to get this question clarified from Linda, and then we're going to wrap up, guys. I have a hard stop at 11 o'clock my time, unfortunately, Nick. So Linda just says, just to clarify, if you have two signers on the document, is that considered one notarization on the eJournal or one? Or is it two notarizations with two lines since it's two notarized signatures?
So the way the system will treat it might be differently than the way you would view it, or you might I guess label it with words. Right now, if you were to look into an entry that's been completed already, it's going to tally up all of the documents that were there. It'll tally up all the signers, and it'll link the signers to the documents if they're on those documents. And remember, you can unselect them so they're not tied to that document. But right now, the system doesn't calculate for you a numerical expression of how many actual quote unquote notarizations took place. So that is something we talked about earlier as well. People ask for clarification, and it's a tricky one because, like we'll say, there are state by state differences, or just different practices people might implement that would determine differently what they classify as a notarization. Or I would typically say, for example, if you have one document, two people signing it, there's one stamp on it, that's one notarization. The system will see that there's one document, it'll say that there's two people, but the system will not further break down a numerical expression of how many notarizations took place. That's something that you can do on your own. And if you want to keep track of that, you could write it in, we'll say, the notes section for each document. But the system itself doesn't parse that for you currently. And that means that, of course, it's up to your own speculation, but the data itself is that the system uses, I guess, or captures, is all very, very tangible. It's just one document, two documents, three documents, four documents, how many signers, who signed one. Of course, if you go to export, to I guess cap off that question, if you go to export and you export just one document, let's say the deed of trust, it'll export that document report with whoever signed it. If somebody didn't sign it, who signed other documents, that person is not going to be linked to it in the same capacity with their signature and their thumbprints. So it does know, the system obviously knows accurately who's on what document, but it won't clarify that for you.
Right. She says, got it. Thank you. Wonderful. Well, Nick, this has been enlightening as usual. And I love all these great questions that got asked. Thank you so much for sharing some of your time in Disneyland with us.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. And I'm going to throw my email down at the bottom as well too. Most people have it already, but I'm always available for people to reach out to if you have questions you need for the clarification. My job is to make sure that everybody is on the same page with what we're able to offer and if we can help you. So I'm always happy to help, and I really appreciate. Thank you for the happy birthday wishes, Valerie. You're very sweet. You guys have all been so great to work with. So I love it. I love coming back every time you have me, Bill. I can't thank you guys enough.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Nick. Enjoy the rest of your time. And those who hung out with us for an hour and a half this morning, this was awesome. Thank you for learning on a Friday with us. I hope you enjoy your weekend. We'll talk with you later.
Bye, guys.